In a time where we're able to get some of the greatest and most memorable experiences ever with games like Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate, Legend of Zelda, and so many more amazing titles, the darker side of gaming brings us stuff like this.
I just move shit with my freaking mind!
With equal parts buggy releases and questionable decisions, I'll be contextualizing some ridiculous moments in the world of gaming by using the 7 deadly sins from Dante's Inferno? Now there are a whole bunch of contenders for the title of the greediest game developer ever, whether it's Ubisoft with its in-game purchases or CD Projekt Red after the tragedy that was Cyberpunk's launch. But one company easily towers above all of them, and that is EA. Now EA has a huge catalog of games with many bangers which I do enjoy, but let's just look at a few of their cash cows. We'll start with one of their most successful sports franchises, FIFA, or as they call it now, EAFC. Why do I pick this? Because I actually like football, and I've actually played most of the FIFAs. Yeah, I'm part of the problem, but I do like doing the Ronaldo sweep with Messi. Now imagine you want to play a game of football with your friends. Well, you need the console for starters, but that's obvious. But then you also need the game. Now there's a catch here. And that catch is the fact that this game comes out every single year with a new release with a minimal amount of improvement every single time. A lot of these things can easily be patched in with a download, but no, EA wants you to buy a new game. Why? Because obviously it's a whole new squad of players that never existed the previous year. Or maybe it's some sort of a new feature that didn't exist last year, like I don't know, timed finishing? But I digress. After buying the game, you obviously need a PS or Xbox subscription, because how else could you possibly play online? This isn't some kind of free-to-play or PC game, but okay, you finally got that subscription. Now what? Now comes the worst part of it all. You need to go to the microtransaction gambling hell that they call Ultimate Team. It's like you're buying a pack of Pokémon cards every single time you want a new player. You might get a Charizard or you might get a Caterpie, and you need to keep doing this until you get a squad of 11 players that you're happy to play with. That is until the new season has started, and then you need to repeat this process all over again. But that was FIFA. EA also has another cash cow that they like to call The Sims. Now, as the name suggests, The Sims is a real-life simulator where you get to control a bunch of characters and do the things you would never actually do in your real life. What the fuck? But to get the complete and proper experience for Sims, you need to buy 15 of these, 12 of these, 19 of these, and 27 of these. Nice. Oh. This best applies to a developer that has the means to flex their muscles, and because of that, has been eating up huge chunks of the market. Some of you probably already guessed it, but it's Xbox, or its parent company, Microsoft.
Xbox.
Phil Spencer is the new head of Xbox.
Welcome to E3 2018. So Undead Labs to Microsoft Studio. Ninja Theory, Compulsion Game, The Initiative.
In Exile Entertainment, Obsidian Entertainment, Double Fine Production,
ZeniMax, and bring Bethesda into the Microsoft family.
Microsoft cutting almost 2,000 jobs at Activision Blizzard and Xbox as the tech landscape.
While Microsoft has purchased a lot of companies over the years, their first notable purchase for gaming was from Mojang, the developers behind Minecraft. And this deal costed them $2.5 billion back in 2014. But this was until 2018. At E3 on that same year, they announced the acquisition of 4 different developers. This included Ninja Theory, Undead Labs, Compulsion Games, and Playground Games. But they followed this up 5 months later again. This time it was for In Exile Entertainment and Obsidian Entertainment. All of these had a decent following and a community that supported these games quite wholeheartedly. 7 months later, they again announced another acquisition, and this time it was for Double Fine Productions. But it was the acquisition that came after this that was the really big one. On 21st September 2020, they announced their acquisition of ZeniMax Media for $7.5 billion. Specifically, they got Bethesda, which is the developer behind Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and they also got all the companies that Bethesda owned. These are the same developers that released games like Doom, Dishonored, Wolfenstein, The Evil Within, and so many more. Needless to say, this $7.5 billion purchase brought many beloved franchises down to Xbox Studios. But on the 18th of January 2022, Microsoft announced that it's going to be buying Activision Blizzard for a whopping $68.7 billion in an all-cash deal. Just imagine the amount of Robux you could get from that. This acquisition brought some of the biggest names in the industry along with their massive player bases. Games like World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, and the most important game of all time, Candy Crush Saga. Now there is no doubt that Microsoft totally splashed the cash here, but despite all their efforts, they're still the third largest gaming company behind Tencent and their competitor Sony. But some praise can be given to Xbox because they did kind of shake up Sony's monopoly. But now instead of there just being one big company to deal with, there are two big companies to deal with. But the fact is that Sony has still built these companies. Xbox has just straight up bought them. And because of that, the sin of gluttony best fits Xbox. This is a choice that was actually really hard to make, and I was actually torn between two different options. One was Activision and the other was Game Freak. Game Freak first released Pokémon back in 1996 for the Game Boy, with Pokémon Red, Blue, and Yellow, with the first time entering an open world with their previous release of Pokémon Arceus. By releasing so many Pokémon games with a top-down approach, they pretty much mastered the ability to deliver a uniquely Pokémon experience when you're traversing through the world of these games. But when they finally moved to a 3D open world, not only were there so many graphical issues, but the long-running issues from way before that, like the lack of voiceover or the lack of a story, were so much more prominent. Like just look at Far Cry 4 or Wolfenstein The New Order or Dragon Age Inquisition or GTA 5. All of these games were released back in 2014, and looking at them compared to Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, they still hold up. For the longest time, fans of the franchise have just been asking for a game that meshes the best of Zelda with the best of Pokémon. But for some reason, Game Freak just wasn't driven enough to give the fans what they had been asking for so long. Nothing proves my point better than the release of Palworld, and because of that, the game is enjoying a ton of viral success at the moment. Now I admit that there is a saving grace here for Game Freak, which is the fact that they've been making Pokémon games for a portable experience mainly. But I guess you can say Nintendo kinda switched that up. While many of its competitors are focusing on graphics and making the best hardware to support that, at a time when video games as a whole were struggling, they were able to rise from the ashes and make the entire industry flourish along with them. Not only are they responsible for the modern design of controllers we still use today, they also created classics that are still widely appreciated. And despite their inability to keep up with modern day graphics, their games are still really highly rated. And because of that, they have a huge community supporting and following everything that they do. And that's also where the second issue is. Whether it's an esports organization or an individual creator, if there are mods or the game's been changed in any way, Nintendo will actively go after them and stop them in an effort to preserve their original IP. The last thing I want to mention is the pricing, because Nintendo games never go down in price like many other games on Steam. This results in older games costing thousands of dollars instead of being easily accessible. The positive thing is that it spawned an entire collector's economy, but if anybody wants to play the older games, you have three options. You can either buy these extremely expensive games, you can choose one of the very few that Nintendo actually has on their online library, or third, emulation. Either normally or normally. And it's due to this extremely hard stance they have towards their own community that I give them the crown for the sin of pride. Next up, we have the sin of envy, and for this, the crown goes to Ubisoft, a company that once created beloved games which had their fair share of problems, but still innovated and brought something new to their audience. But this was then. Now, they've lost what made them special and kept only that what made them terrible. While there are some cool things in their games like good graphics and a decent progression system, they're all just surface level and plagued by an underwhelming gameplay experience. Like their questionable and convoluted story, repetitive as f*** missions, and a balancing act between stealth and melee that makes both of them an underwhelming experience. And let's not forget about the microtransactions. I feel Ubisoft was very inspired by Witcher and GTA when they made their shift to an open world RPG, but the game unfortunately does not match up to the combined brilliance that an experience playing Witcher provided. Here's to hoping that the new Prince of Persia is a step in the right direction. However, as things stand, in the folly of their envy, the crown for this sin goes to Ubisoft. This is a bit of a debatable one, honestly, because if I was to choose a smaller developer that made sexually explicit games, that would probably fit better. But in terms of a company that's big and that's made sexually explicit content, I think there's only one that stands out, and that is Rockstar, or specifically the GTA series. Being an open world, it gives you the freedom to do whatever you want. So when Rockstar embodies the sin of lust, I do think it's just by nature of what the game is and what it provides, and that is the freedom for a player to choose whatever kind of adventure they want to go on, which is generally a good thing. But if any big company fits the mold for this sin, I think it's definitely Rockstar. It's a relatively smaller developer, but a relatively popular game, and that is Yandere Simulator, specifically the developer behind it, Yandev. Considering the size of the development team, I don't want to focus on it too much, nor do I want to go too deep into it, so I'll be keeping it short and simple. Yandere Simulator was a game that was relatively popular a few years back, but due to many controversies and many issues with the developer, the game was stuck in development hell for a very long time, and it continues to be in development to this day. But the reason why he's on this list is because of his extreme blowouts and reactions towards his fans and his audience, and because of those I think he fits the sin of wrath the best. That being said, it doesn't compare to the giant organizations I've looked at so far, but if you do still want to look up what's happened, you can just search up Yandev Rage compilations on YouTube, and you get a bunch of videos that have just compiled all his moments. And with that, we've reached the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.